Breaking news, the U.S. military has made a major policy shift on Israel, and the entire Arab world is reacting with shock. This decision is sparking new debates, raising serious questions about regional security, and could even reshape alliances across the Middle East. Stay tuned as we break down what happened, why it matters, and how it could affect the future of the region. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's topic is one of the most talked about developments in global geopolitics, the sudden and unexpected shift in U.S. military policy toward Israel. For decades, the U.S. has been Israel's closest military partner, providing advanced weapons, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic backing at nearly every turn. But in a surprising move, Washington has decided to slightly recalibrate its position, signaling that unconditional support may no longer be guaranteed. This announcement has sent shockwaves across the Arab world, where many governments and analysts are trying to understand what this change could mean for the balance of power in the region. Is this a strategic realignment meant to pressure Israel toward peace negotiations, or is it a broader U.S. effort to reduce its direct involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts? In this video, we'll dive deep into the timeline of this decision, its potential impact on U.S.-Israel relations, the reactions from Arab capitals, and what it could mean for future conflicts in the region. Let's begin by first understanding exactly what this shift involves. The U.S. military shift on Israel is not a total withdrawal of support, but a recalibration of commitments. According to official statements, the U.S. will still provide Israel with defensive aid, including Iron Dome funding and intelligence sharing, but it will limit offensive weapon deliveries that could be used in major escalations without congressional approval. This is being described as a conditional support model, meaning that Washington is placing more emphasis on accountability and compliance with international law before greenlighting large-scale arms transfers. This move came after months of internal debate within the Pentagon and State Department, where senior officials argued that unconditional military aid could be fueling tensions and prolonging conflicts rather than preventing them. The new policy also includes closer oversight of how USD-supplied weapons are used in operations that affect civilian populations. This is significant because it marks the first time the U.S. has formally linked military aid to conduct on the battlefield. Supporters of the move say it's about protecting America's credibility and upholding international norms. Critics, however, see it as abandoning an ally at a critical time, potentially emboldening adversaries such as Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Understanding why Washington made this shift requires looking at both domestic and international pressures. Inside the U.S., there has been growing bipartisan concern about America's endless military entanglements and the cost of supporting foreign wars. Lawmakers have been under pressure from their constituents to prioritize domestic issues over foreign conflicts. At the same time, international allies in Europe have been calling for the U.S. to adopt a more balanced approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, especially after a series of high-casualty operations that drew criticism worldwide. Another factor is the evolving threat landscape. The U.S. is increasingly focused on competition with China and Russia, which means relocating military resources and attention away from the Middle East. Strategists in the Pentagon argue that this recalibration allows the U.S. to maintain its security commitments while avoiding being dragged into every regional escalation. They also hope it will encourage Israel to engage in more diplomatic initiatives rather than relying solely on military deterrence. Whether this approach will work remains to be seen, but it represents a major shift in thinking at the highest levels of U.S. defense policy. Israel's reaction to the U.S. decision has been mixed but cautious. On one hand, Israeli officials insist that the alliance with Washington remains strong and that most forms of military cooperation will continue. On the other hand, there is concern in Tel Aviv that this new conditionality could slow down the approval process for critical arms shipments during a time of crisis. Israeli leaders have long argued that their security environment is unique, surrounded by hostile actors who do not recognize their statehood and therefore requires rapid and sometimes preemptive military action. Prime Minister and Defense Ministry statements have stressed that Israel will continue to defend itself by any means necessary, with or without U.S. approval. However, behind closed doors, there is anxiety that this might signal a longer-term U.S. disengagement from the Middle East. Some Israeli commentators even warn that this could push Israel to expand its own domestic arms industry further and seek deeper security ties with other nations such as India or European powers. Still, Israel is unlikely to risk open confrontation with Washington, given how critical U.S. support remains to its qualitative military edge. In the Arab world, this policy shift has been met with a mix of surprise, cautious optimism, and strategic recalculation. Governments in Riyadh, Cairo, and Amman have quietly welcomed the move, interpreting it as a sign that Washington might be open to a more balanced approach to the Palestinian issue. Palestinian officials have openly praised the U.S. for taking steps toward accountability and have called for even stricter conditions on aid. At the same time, Arab analysts are warning that this shift does not necessarily mean Washington is abandoning Israel. It simply means that the U.S. wants to avoid being drawn into every conflict automatically. Some Arab states are also concerned that if U.S. support for Israel decreases too much, it could create a power vacuum that Iran and its proxies might exploit, destabilizing the region further. The reactions have therefore been measured, but there is a general sense that this could be the start of a new chapter in USD Middle East relations, one where Washington acts more as a mediator rather than an unconditional backer of one side. The potential impact on regional security is enormous. For decades, Israel's guaranteed U.S. backing has been a major deterrent against large-scale wars with its neighbors. If that backing is now conditional, adversaries might feel emboldened to test Israel's resolve, leading to more frequent skirmishes and proxy confrontations. On the other hand, some experts argue that this could actually de-escalate tensions because Israel may become more selective about when and how it uses military force. The U.S. is betting that conditional support will incentivize restraint rather than aggression, but that is a risky gamble. Another dimension is the role of Iran, which may interpret this as an opportunity to expand its influence in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Regional powers like Saudi Arabia and the UAE may also accelerate their own defense modernization programs to hedge against uncertainty. In short, this policy shift could trigger an arms race, or it could set the stage for new diplomatic frameworks aimed at reducing conflict. The coming months will be crucial in determining which path the region takes. Beyond the Middle East, the international community has responded with cautious approval. European Union officials have praised the move as aligning with international law and humanitarian standards. NATO allies see it as part of Washington's broader shift toward shared responsibility in global security affairs. Russia and China, however, have seized the moment to criticize U.S. foreign policy as inconsistent, accusing Washington of using military aid as leverage to control allies. This criticism could play well in the global South, where skepticism of U.S. interventionism runs deep. Meanwhile, the United Nations has welcomed the policy as a step toward de-escalation, but emphasized that it must be paired with renewed diplomatic efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If Washington follows up this shift with real peace initiatives, it could regain credibility as a mediator. If not, the policy could backfire and be seen as symbolic rather than substantive. Domestically, the U.S. political debate over this move has been intense. Supporters argue that it is a necessary modernization of U.S. foreign policy, one that puts American interests first while still honoring commitments to allies. Progressive lawmakers have celebrated the move as a win for human rights and accountability, while some conservative voices have accused the administration of betraying a key ally. Think tanks and media outlets are deeply divided, with some calling it a pragmatic step and others warning that it risks emboldening America's enemies. Public opinion polls show that Americans are increasingly wary of foreign wars, but still view Israel as an important ally. This means that future administrations could either strengthen or reverse this policy depending on which way political winds blow. The decision could become a major campaign issue in upcoming elections, especially if a major conflict erupts in the Middle East while these restrictions are in place. For Israel, this shift could have long-term strategic consequences. On a practical level, it means that Israeli military planners will have to account for the possibility that certain weapons or munitions might not be available in time for rapid operations. This could force Israel to invest more heavily in self-sufficiency, especially in missile production, advanced drones, and cyber warfare capabilities. Diplomatically, Israel may also seek to strengthen ties with alternative partners, from Gulf states that share a common enemy in Iran to Asian powers eager for defense cooperation. Economically, the Israeli defense industry could see a boost as the government channels more funding into local production. However, this independence comes at a cost. The loss of guaranteed U.S. support might force Israel to adopt a more cautious foreign policy posture. Some analysts argue this could ultimately benefit Israel by reducing the frequency of conflicts and pushing all sides closer to negotiations. In conclusion, the U.S. military's shift on Israel is one of the most significant geopolitical developments of the decade. It represents not just a change in policy, but a shift in Washington's entire approach to the Middle East, from unconditional support to conditional partnership. Whether this leads to peace, further conflict, or a complete reshuffling of alliances will depend on how all regional players respond in the coming months. One thing is clear: the era of automatic American backing for Israel may be over, and that will have ripple effects far beyond the region. What do you think? Is this a smart move by Washington or a dangerous gamble that could destabilize the Middle East? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found it informative. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into global security issues, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.